You know, every time someone asks me what the strangest and most disturbing urban legend I've ever heard in Korea is, I always remember this one. I didn't live through this story myself. It was told to me by an old friend of my family, one of those people who swear they heard it directly from someone close many years ago. It's one of those stories that get passed around from person to person, and no one knows exactly which building it happened in. They just say it was in some tall apartment building, an ordinary one like any other in the city. And that's how the best legends are born, right? They say everything started on a winter night. The main character was a student named Koreaaa, 19 years old, who spent hours studying for college entrance exams. That night, she stayed late in the library on a campus nobody remembers exactly which one it was. All they know is that when she left, it was freezing cold and the streets were almost empty. Koreaaa walked quickly to her building, carrying books, notes, and that kind of exhaustion only people who study through the night understand. When she walked into the lobby, she felt a quiet relief. There was no one around, just the distant sound of the heater and the weak glow of the lights. She pressed the elevator button. When the doors opened, she stepped in, leaned her back against the wall, and pressed the button for the 14th floor. That's when something strange happened. Before the doors could close, Koreaaa saw a figure coming from the hallway. A man, running. Not running in panic, but fast enough to reach the elevator at the last second. He put his hand between the doors, and they opened again. Koreaaa jumped in surprise, but that feeling quickly changed into something else. Because the man was beautiful. The kind of beauty that grabs your attention instantly, almost unreal. Tall, strong, a perfectly symmetrical face, dark hair falling perfectly in place. Something about him looked like a K-pop idol, one of those who seemed to have no flaws at all. The man looked at her briefly and asked in a low, polite voice, "Are you going to the 14th floor?" Koreaaa, a little embarrassed and amazed, answered, "Yes." The man then reached over and pressed the button for the 13th floor. The doors closed, and silence took over. As they went up, Koreaaa tried not to stare at the man, but it was impossible to ignore his presence. Something about that beauty felt magnetic. But as the seconds passed, she started to feel a slight discomfort. She couldn't explain why. Maybe it was just the exhaustion. Or maybe it was the way the man stood completely still, staring at the door as if he was waiting for something. The elevator reached the 13th floor. The doors opened. The man stepped out. But before leaving, he slowly turned to Koreaaa and smiled gently, almost sweetly. "See you later," he said. Koreaaa, confused, laughed awkwardly and replied, "See you later." The doors began to close. And in the final instant, when there was only a thin gap left, the man turned again. But the smile wasn't the same. His face changed completely. That beautiful smile twisted into something horrifying, distorted. His eyes widened, empty, completely insane. He lifted his hand and pulled from his jacket a long, sharp knife that caught the light from the hallway. And then he said, in a completely different voice, almost like a growl, "Upstairs." The doors closed before Koreaaa could scream. The elevator kept going up, too slowly, so slow it felt like it was being pulled by invisible hands. Koreaaa started to panic. She pressed every button, tried to block the doors with her backpack, cried, begged, hit the walls with all her strength. But nothing worked. And while the elevator kept moving, all she could imagine was the man climbing the stairs. Hallway after hallway, step after step, always a little faster than the elevator. When the number 14 lit up, Koreaaa felt her whole body go cold. She knew he would already be there. The doors opened slowly. The hallway was empty, silent. Koreaaa took one hesitant step outside, and that's when she saw him. At the end of the hallway, the man was standing there, perfectly still, with the same twisted smile, and the knife shining in his hand. He was waiting for her, as if he knew she would end up there from the very beginning. They say there was a girl, around 18 or 19 years old, named So-yeon. She was known for one thing. She was obsessed with her appearance. So-yeon was always researching homemade treatments, old Korean techniques, and products that promised perfect skin. Anything she found online, on blogs, forums, or even old magazines, she tried. Weird masks, hot compresses, oils that burned the skin, dangerous exfoliation. Nothing ever felt too much for her. It was like she believed that if she could get completely smooth skin, without a single pore, she would finally be happy. She wanted perfect skin. Then one day, while she was walking home from school, So-yeon met a very strange old lady standing in front of a traditional cosmetic shop. The woman was handing out small folded pieces of paper, like old recipes. Curious, So-yeon took one. Inside, there were instructions for a treatment she had never seen before. The woman only said, "It's an ancient method. Complete skin renewal. No risks, if you follow every step exactly as written." And she walked away before So-yeon could ask anything. The recipe said, "Fill a bathtub with hot water. Pour sesame seeds until the water looks alive. Lie down and stay there until your pores open completely. When you get out, your skin will be new. Water alive." That detail caught So-yeon's attention. But the promise of complete renewal was stronger. That day, she went to the market and bought a huge bag of sesame seeds, much more than anyone would normally buy. At home, she waited until her mother was busy in the kitchen. She went into the bathroom, turned on the hot water, and filled the bathtub. Then she opened the bag and poured in the seeds. All of them. They floated for a few seconds, then began to sink, swirl, and move slightly. But So-yeon wasn't scared. She just thought about the perfect skin she would have. And she got into the bathtub. About 40 minutes later, her mother knocked on the door. "So-yeon, are you okay? You're taking too long." The girl's voice came out muffled. "I'm fine, Amma. Just a little more." Her mother, used to her daughter's crazy routines, went back to what she was doing. But time kept passing. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3. And the mother started to get nervous. She returned to the door. "So-yeon, are you okay? Open the door." The girl answered, "I'm coming. Just a little more." But her voice didn't sound normal. It was slow, shaky, like she was trying to hide sobs. Finally scared, the mother grabbed a spare key. But the door wouldn't open. So-yeon had locked it from the inside. Her mother banged on the door, called her daughter's name. Nothing. Panicking, she stepped back and kicked the door open. The scene inside the bathroom, they say nobody who saw it ever forgot. Thick steam still filled the air. The smell of sesame was strong enough to make you sick. The bathtub was empty, but the seeds were everywhere, stuck to the floor, on the walls, and especially on So-yeon's body. The girl was crouched near the mirror, crying uncontrollably. Her body looked like it was covered with hundreds of tiny black and white bumps. But it wasn't dirt. The seeds were embedded in her skin, going in through her pores, sticking as if they had rooted there. It was like her skin had become soil. So-yeon held a toothpick in her hands. Her nails were broken and bloody, and she was trying to pull the seeds out one by one, crying in pain. Each seed she pulled ripped her skin open. Blood ran down her arms and legs, mixed with the scattered seeds. "I just wanted to be pretty," she repeated, shaking. They say her mother screamed so loudly that the neighbors called for help. But when they finally took So-yeon out of the bathroom, some swear there were still seeds, moving, buried under her skin, as if they had a life of their own. The strangest part is that, after this incident, no one ever saw the old woman handing out recipes again. Some say she still appears from time to time in markets and alleyways in different cities, offering miracle methods to people who want perfect beauty too badly. And she always gives one last warning. Perfect skin always comes with a price. That is the legend of the sesame seeds. They say that a very long time ago, there was a boy tormented by his own appearance. He suffered from severe acne, not just a few pimples here and there, but intense redness that covered almost his entire face, along with painful swollen bumps that everyone noticed. They say he was ashamed to go outside, avoided looking people in the eyes, and did everything he could to hide his face with his hair or hands. His self-esteem was as small as a grain of rice, and every morning in front of the mirror was a new kind of pain. He suffered a lot. Desperate for a solution, any solution, the boy spent hours searching the internet, reading obscure forums, old blogs, and questionable homemade tips. Until one day, during one of these searches, he found something that didn't just seem strange, but completely absurd to a normal person, though not to someone desperate. The message said, almost casually, if you want to wake up with clear skin, put a live cockroach under your pillow. It will take your imperfections away. Most people would have closed the page, laughed, and ignored it. But the boy was tired, exhausted. Desperation makes even the most grotesque superstition seem reasonable. So, filled with a mix of hope and anxiety, he spent the entire night looking for a cockroach in the house. He searched corners, lifted boxes, opened drawers, until he finally found a big shiny one. He carefully caught it, shaking with disgust, and ran to his room. He placed the live insect under his pillow, took a deep breath, and lay down, trying to ignore the idea of a bug crawling so close to his head. But he closed his eyes believing, or wanting to believe, that it might work. And he fell asleep. When morning came, the cockroach was gone. Completely gone. Still half asleep, the boy went to the mirror, hoping to see if the remedy had really worked. But when he looked, he froze. His skin was clear, smooth. No pimples, no marks, no redness. It looked like magic, an impossible miracle. He ran around the house celebrating, barely able to contain his excitement. For the first time in a long time, he felt handsome. And that morning, he went to school with confidence, feeling safer than he ever had. His friends were shocked by how much he had changed in just one day. Some were even jealous of his perfect skin. But the joy didn't last. A few hours later, while talking with classmates, he felt an intense itch on his cheeks. At first light, then unbearable. Soon came pain, like tiny burning points under the skin. His skin started to crack, peeling off in pieces, as if it were opening from the inside. Desperate, he asked to go to the bathroom. When he reached the mirror, he saw the skin move, not like muscle, but like something pushing from the inside out. Tiny bubbles formed and burst quickly. The skin seemed to pulse. And then he understood. His face wasn't just clean, it was full of something. The legend says that the cockroach, the night before, had not simply gone away. It found warm shelter under the pillow, crawled up to the boy's face, and, attracted by the inflamed pores, deposited its eggs there. Small, invisible, silent, and now they were hatching. They say that one day, many years ago, a traveler was walking down an almost abandoned street somewhere in the countryside of Korea. It was late afternoon, and the orange sunlight was fading behind old buildings, leaving long shadows that seemed to follow every step. The wind blew slowly, making dry leaves scratch across the ground. That's when he saw her. A woman, tall, extremely elegant, wearing a dark long coat that moved softly with the breeze. Her hair was long, straight, and so shiny it seemed to reflect the little light that remained. But the most unusual thing was the white surgical mask covering the lower half of her face. At that time, masks were not common, and that made her stand out even more. The woman walked toward him calmly, as if she had been waiting for him. When she was close enough, she stopped in front of him, tilted her head slightly, and asked in a voice too gentle for such an empty street, "Do you think I'm pretty?" The traveler hesitated. It was a simple question, but something in her tone felt wrong, as if the answer had already been judged before it was even spoken. He thought about responding, but before he could say a word, the woman lifted her hand to the mask and pulled it down. And there it was. Her mouth was not a normal mouth. It wasn't even human. They say it stretched from ear to ear, long, unnatural, as if her face had been split open and stitched back together in a grotesque way. But she was smiling, a huge, impossible smile, and that made it even more disturbing. Then she asked again, with the same soft, almost sweet voice, "And now, do you think I'm pretty now?" They say that if someone answers no, she doesn't hesitate for even a second. She pulls out a pair of long, sharp scissors from inside her coat and strikes quickly. There's no time to scream or run. But if the person answers yes, she doesn't become happy. In fact, she becomes even more excited. Because, according to the legend, she then stretches her smile even wider, if that's even possible, and brings the scissors close to the victim's face. Then, it wouldn't be fair, she says, for you not to have a smile as beautiful as mine. And with a precise movement, she cuts the same shape into the other person's face. No one knows what happened to that traveler. The story never says whether he escaped, lied well enough, or simply disappeared on that empty street. Legends rarely give clear endings. They prefer doubt, silence, and what might have happened. Some say the woman is not just a vengeful spirit, but the shadow of someone who suffered a terrible injustice in life, now wandering the streets searching for answers she never received. Others swear she appears especially to those who walk alone, distracted, through quiet alleys. And there are people who insist that, even today, in certain old neighborhoods, you can still hear soft footsteps behind you, and a sweet voice asking, "Do you think I'm pretty?" The legend tells of an evil entity that wandered through the rural areas of ancient Korea, a time when houses were simple wooden structures and bathrooms were always outside. They were small, fragile buildings, placed far enough away so no one would confuse their smell with the house itself. At night, they became even scarier, dimly lit, surrounded by darkness and silence, like small caves waiting for anyone brave enough to enter. It was in those shadows that the entity lived. People say it was a woman, but nothing about her truly looked human. Her hair was extremely long, dragging across the ground like dark rivers. Her skin was pale, so white that it seemed to glow under the moonlight. She also wore white clothes, but not a traditional hanbok, simple, old clothing, stained by time, as if it didn't belong to any era. The most disturbing detail, though, was where she stayed, on the bathroom ceiling. While someone walked in, lit a small lamp, and crouched over the hole in the ground, she was right above them, perfectly still, eyes wide open, watching. People described the feeling as if someone was breathing close to the back of their neck, even when there was no wind. Some swore they heard her hair dragging across the ceiling. Others said they felt cold drops fall on their back, which they later discovered were the entity's tears. But what truly fed the fear was her pattern. She didn't appear every day. There was a rule, almost mathematical, almost ritualistic. She only appeared on days ending with the number 6. The 6th, the 16th, and the 26th. Always at night, when the moon was high and the bathrooms were darker than usual. On those dates, no one dared go near that little building alone. Families sent children in pairs or waited until morning. But avoiding it wasn't always possible. And whoever entered the bathroom on those days, the legend says, was at the mercy of the woman on the ceiling. Some said she only watched, completely still, leaving a terrible impression that never left the mind. Others believed that if the person showed disrespect, the entity would silently come down, leaving deep marks on their body or ripping away the voice of anyone who tried to scream. Time passed. Rural villages changed, cities grew, and outdoor bathrooms disappeared. But like many Korean legends, this one did not die. It simply adapted. They say that with modern houses, small apartments, and electric lights, the entity found new places to hide. She could no longer stay on wooden ceilings, so she moved to the darkest corner of the modern bathroom. Some say she now hides behind the shower curtain. Others swear she stays stuck to the ceiling, where shadows gather when the light is weak. And still, the ancient rule remained unchanged. She appears on the 6th, 16th, and 26th. To protect themselves, people adapted old rituals to modern bathrooms. They say that to avoid being taken, a person must enter the bathroom, take a deep breath, and cough 3 times. Then they must leave a small food offering in the corner of the bathroom. Nothing big, a bit of rice, a piece of fruit, a piece of bread. Something simple, symbolic, a sign that you recognize her presence and are not trying to challenge her. Those who forget, they say they spend the night hearing footsteps in an empty bathroom. Or they find long strands of hair in the drain, even when no one showered. Or they feel that same terrible cold on the back of their neck, like someone is there, right above, watching, patient, silent, waiting for the next day, ending in 6 to strike again.